Thank you, Madam President. Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
First, I've got some questions on the elections portion.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Elections.
The word elections. Yes, please ask questions.
So this bill has provided $15 million made available to local boards and administered by the State Board of Elections, the way that I read it. The language specifically says reimbursement of eligible costs. What costs will be eligible when our local Board of Elections are looking at this budget?
Thank you. Yes, he's correct. It's $15 million for eligible costs. And according to the bill language, it's for reimbursement of eligible costs, including but not limited to the replacement of voting systems and equipment, absentee ballot scanners, mail processing equipment, and infrastructure to protect the connectivity and security of county election software.
Thank you. And through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Our mobile polling sites, we passed a bill in this House promoting mobile polling sites and requiring them of local boards of elections. Will they be eligible for reimbursement under this budget?
No, because unfortunately that bill was only passed by the Senate, not the Assembly, so it's not the law.
Through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
So if that bill does become a law, the allocation here of the $15 million won't apply to mobile polling sites and they won't be funded, is that right?
My guess would be that if we were attempting to pass that bill to go into effect in this fiscal year, we'd want to make sure that we clarified in language that if that law was going to effect in this fiscal year, that these monies should include those polling sites as well.
Thank you for that. And through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
We also passed a bill that mandated additional full-time staff at local boards of elections. If they've got to build out additional space at their Board of Elections or lease additional space, will this $15 million, would the additional space be eligible under infrastructure?
So that was language for additional staff, and I don't believe that this money is allowed to be used for staffing.
Through you, Madam President, the sponsor would continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Excuse me, and just to clarify the previous answer, that bill also didn't pass both houses, so it's not law this year. And now, of course, I'll take the next question.
The sponsor will yield.
Thank you. Yeah, the question is specifically about space for that staff. If the other chamber agrees and that bill that we passed here does become law, and we've mandated that our local boards of elections do have to have additional staff, will they be eligible under this $15 million for the space required to expand and account for that additional staff at local boards of elections? Infrastructure.
No, we don't believe that space for staffing was assumed included in this infrastructure list, although there are funds for capital monies for expansion as needed at the local level. So conceivably, if you had a Board of Election that was so tight on space you couldn't squeeze a couple more people in, you could explore capital funds for expansion.
Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
We also passed a bill in this House, the New York Voting and Elections Database and Institute. Can the State Board of Elections use a portion of this $15 million for that database as we're talking about replacing voting systems and infrastructure and security?
So no, this money cannot be used for that database, and that bill also has not passed both houses.
Through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Does the sponsor yield?
I'd
Yes,
like
the
to,
sponsor
I'd like
yield.
to shift gears, if that's okay, onto some energy policy, if you would.
Staff for that purpose.
Understood.
Yes. I don't have all $230 billion memorized, just tell you. Question, Madam President.
So there was $200 million for residential low-income energy efficiency. The governor calls this the Empower Plus program for heating, cooling, health and safety, related improvements and expenses. That's what I'd like to focus on. My first question, does someone have to own their home outright or own their home at all, have a mortgage on it? Do they have to be a homeowner in order to be eligible for this program?
You can be a renter as well.
Okay, in this $200 million
Are you asking the sponsor to yield?
Oh, through you, Madam President, if the sponsor would continue
Will
to
the
yield.
sponsor yield? The
Yes.
sponsor yields.
This $200 million for the Empower Plus program, what qualifies as low income?
You're eligible if your income is 60% less than the state median income. So that would then be driven by the size of your household as well.
And through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield? The
Yes.
sponsor yields.
I noticed also the language with this $200 million says health and safety improvements. What health and safety improvements would we anticipate in the Empower Plus program?
So energy efficient appliances, not only do they save the costs of energy and perhaps switch you from one form of energy or another, the newer approvable forms of energy are actually safer and healthier for you and your family. So gas is actually proving to be exceptionally dangerous in many situations. We've even learned that gas actually explains the rate of asthma in low-income children far more than we even understood a few years ago.
Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
So just to clarify, and I may have some disagreements, but it's probably a debate for a different day. Just to clarify, the health and safety portion is really just talking about electrification and removal of gas appliances, is that right?
I suppose oil boilers also, so it's not just gas and oil.
Thank you. And through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
The way that the governor has written the Empower program currently, we're eligible for heating and cooling appliances. Where in New York State is any cooling appliance using fossil fuels?
I think he might have caught us with no answer. I don't actually know if there are any cooling systems that operate on gas or oil. We sincerely don't know. Maybe something on a very large commercial level, but if this was a game show, you've stumped me.
Well, I'm not going to sit down just yet. Through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes, I do.
The sponsor yields.
Would, this is said, related improvements and expenses are eligible under the $200 million that we've allocated here for the governor's Empower Plus program. Would upgrades to electrical service to a home or apartment be eligible for that?
You have a possible answer to the stump me question. So my husband and I actually put in a new HVAC system in our home, which is heating and cooling. So we paid for one system, which is then not using oil and gas for the heating, but it actually has an option to cover cooling as well, which I'm very happy about in summer. So maybe that's what was meant. So my understanding is it would be for electric upgrade for specific purposes and specific appliances.
Through you, Madam President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
So electrical upgrades to the home, if your home was 100 amp service and you needed 200 amp service in order to electrify and get the electric appliances that this program is really driving at, that wouldn't be eligible as far as related improvements and expenses go under the Empower program? Do I understand that correctly?
I'm being told it would depend on the specific requirements of the installation. So I think some of the electric upgrading systems do require an upgrade in the level of electricity coming into a specific home. I have to go to an engineering school now also, Madam President.